Hey folks, Steve here with a unboxing video that does not include shrink. And I'm going to be doing a little bit, I guess, of an introduction to the products that I'm going to be showing in this video. This is actually going to be three different games I'm unboxing in one video, just to kind of show you folks some of what this product is, to try to explain a little bit of it. And it's something that I got as sort of a little bit of just a splurge. I've been on a kick sort of in my free time that, well, I haven't been gaming a whole lot lately, unfortunately, but I have always been a kind of strategic level guy. I've now been playing operational games, and I have also had an interest in battle or tactical level games. And for a while, the most experience I've had with that sort of thing was Great Battles of History from GMT. So fighting these famous battles and having a game system specific to the era. And that's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed that. And I've looked around at other systems. Now, I like Napoleonic War stuff. I have a number of strategic level Napoleonic War games. They're all fun and interesting. I think it's a very interesting time period, both from a military history perspective as well as social history and just development of all sorts of things. Amazing stuff, right? And I was looking to see, okay, what is a good battle series um, that's out there? And I had heard some rumblings about the Library of Napoleonic Battles series, which is what I have in front of the camera here. It is published by Operational Studies Group, OSG. And basically, their whole operation is by and large focused around publishing games on the Napoleonic battles. They have some campaign games as well, which I have not procured, but they have this whole thing where you buy a game and it has 3 to 4 or 5 battles from the Napoleonic era, and they stretch right now across the whole time frame. And so we're talking, as this game on camera right now is showing the War of the First Coalition. Now, there's something to point out. It says Part 2. I'm going to get to that in a second. But that, this War of the First Coalition, there will be games in the series covering the War of the Second Coalition, and then there are existing games that run all the way through to Waterloo. And so, the whole operation is making sure that each battle of the Napoleonic era, each major battle, is represented in a boxed game and uses the same system and more or less the same rules. And so far, what I've seen, there's definitely an interest and positive feelings towards the system. So I said, well, why don't I get some and see how it goes when I can get to actually playing them? But the first part was getting the game so I can kind of peruse them and get a feel for things. And so I decided to go to the website. I looked at what games were in print or what were available, and it was kind of interesting just to see their website. I'll say that these games are, um, they're not cheap, they're not maybe overly expensive, there's certainly a premium to them, but I think it is to some degree warranted, and I'll show you some of why here once we get the boxes going. But I ordered 3 games. Now, there was one more I would have liked to have gotten, but it was out of print, and it's one of these interesting things with the publisher that they've sort of got everything mapped out. There's a PDF on the website. I will link the website in PDF in the description below, that covers sort of like what the plan is for all the games. It's these battles broken out across, it's like 80 battles across all these different plan games, some of which have been published, some that have not yet been published, some with plans to be published in the not too distant future, and some that were published but are now out of print. The most significant one in my mind that I would have purchased if it was in stock was Napoleon's Last Gamble, which basically represents the final 100 days type of stuff, where it's Waterloo, Quadrilateral. I can't speak French, so sorry. And like Wavre and all that stuff. Like those final couple of battles, those are all in a box called Napoleon's Last Gamble. And that was out of print, unfortunately. I did ask a question. I sent a contact us message, and I got a pretty quick response back within like 12 hours. And I asked, when could we expect Napoleon's Last Gamble to be back in print, or are we going to be waiting several years? And the response, I think, was from, I'd have to look if it was Kevin Zucker or if it was somebody affiliated with just the website and the company, that the wait should only be some months. So they must do something where they're printing batches of the titles, and they'll sell out, and then they'll kind of get things on the docket for maybe another short run. And something that they've been doing recently is getting some of these newer constructed games of the components with a newer box. So you can see this is Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral, War of the First Coalition Part 2, Lodi, Castiglione, Mantova, Arcole, Rivoli. These significant battles, all this, it's a nice looking box, or it's attractive, simple, and elegant. I don't know. And then I had also picked up Napoleon's Wheel, which very similar form factor and design in terms of just the aesthetic. I like it. And then I also purchased Napoleon Against Russia. These were all in stock and seemed like a good spread of things to get. Somebody who just was willing to jump in and get a few titles in the series. Before we start going through all these, I had picked these three because they were sort of nice, I guess, milestones in the Napoleonic era. We have some action from Bonaparte before he is the emperor, and then we have the sort of Battle of Austerlitz. So it seemed like a significant set of battles to have, so that made sense. Get Napoleon's Wheel, and then obviously Napoleon Against Russia. I think that's a fairly significant time, and I would have liked to have bookended this set with Napoleon's Last Gamble. I know that skips over, we were basically missing out on 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, and then a bunch of other stuff. But if I was only going to have so many of these games, I think this would have been a nice spread, and this is a nice spread, all for the fact that I couldn't get Napoleon's Last Gamble. Now, there are published games on their website that are entries in the Peninsular War, that there are entries in the final campaigns of 1814 with Napoleon on the strategic retreat and the campaigns in France. Some of those are available. Some are starting to become sold out. My expectation is just over time, those games will come back into availability. So it may just be on a cycle. Like if there's one you're missing and you want it, you may just have to wait a little while until it comes back around. I'm sure that there are some titles that are more popular than others. Napoleon's Last Gamble, probably very popular, compared to like maybe this one might not get as much because maybe folks aren't as interested. This first one here, and I'm gonna set a couple of these aside so we have a chance to look at this one in particular. The Bonaparte in the Quadrilateral is one of the newer titles. I think this just came out earlier this year, so it is pretty fresh. And you'll notice it says Part 2, War of the First Coalition Part 1 has not been published yet. So whatever order, I guess, that these things get published in, they're not necessarily chronological order. It's just as they can prepare the game to be published and what makes sense. And just to kind of show the back of the box, so you get a little bit of basically the strategic map, kind of showing where these battles are in the game related to one another. Talks about the game content, so there's going to be 4 full-size color maps, 1 folio-sized map, a scenario folder, which is, in my mind, the equivalent of like a playbook from another publisher, a rule book, 2 counter sheets, and 15-player aid cards. And then there's a nice description of the battles that are included and some information there. Now, this is one important thing. Command, leadership, hidden movement, road march, optional universal decks. So there's a card assisted element to this system where you can play with these card decks that allow you to do certain things. This game does not come with those card decks. You have to either purchase the decks as separate components, which they have that on their store, or you purchase a title or have had a title that already includes the deck. And I did that. I believe it's Napoleon's Wheel includes the decks. So I made sure I was at least covered for that. So just doing the games came like this. There was not shrink wrap. I think every order that you get is constructed like they have all the components and they put them together for you, when you purchase the game. So it was like when these showed up, I pulled them out of the box. They were just like this. And I have already opened these up a little bit and kind of looked through them. So we'll show this and you get a sense of the quality of the product. Very first thing, this was just in the box. It was not in this box. It was in the shipping box, but I put it in here for safekeeping. So here you see a flyer for Bonaparte Overruns Piedmont, which is that War of the Coalition Part 1. This has not been published yet, but it is basically it's like an ad saying, hey, this is coming out. You might be interested in it, and I am. And there's a little bit more information on it. It's got a snippet from the PDF that's available on the website that shows what battles are included, some information on those, the number of turns, how many maps it is. And then you can see here, War of the First Coalition Part 1, now available for pre-order, publication date expected February 2023. So this is, what, 6 months away from being printed, and it does look like, much like many other pre-order games from other publishers, if you pre-order, you're getting a better price than if you're buying it post-publication. So a little bit of information there. So a nice little flyer, and for now I'm keeping this in the box just to keep it for reference purposes. But for me, it's like, oh, okay, well then I'll have Part 1 and Part 2. I'll have the Napoleonic battles of the First Coalition, because in my mind, there's certainly other battles of the War of the First Coalition that it seems like will not be included because they lack Napoleon, but I still might have liked to have seen more on the War of the First Coalition. I think it's an interesting war. Any coverage of that is always appreciated. Caveman Andy had packed this, so thank you, Caveman Andy. So what's in here? We have a series rules book. This is marked as 7.35. I assume this is the latest version. Now, they got a nice table of contents on the back. Front's got some artwork, very nice. This is a color rule book, and generally in a 2-column format. And I swear, if I was just looking at this page by itself, and you said, Steve, you're looking at a GMT game rulebook, I'd believe you. So it is very similar. The font seems similar even, font choices. The layout, you can see, so 2-column format, which is going to make it, pretty easy read. There are example pictures showing the different types of leaders. There's a command structure to this game, how to do movement with examples. So that's goodness. How to do hidden forces and manipulate that on the game board. Combat results. Shock table, so handling shock as a distinct part of combat. Bombardment with artillery. There's a whole cavalry charges, all the sorts of things you would expect from a Napoleonic game series. Talking about supply here, baggage trains. So there's a sizable amount of rules here. So when we look at, it's 23 pages, I guess. I mean, is that a really heavy game? I guess not really, but this is dense, 22 pages of rules. That's just the series rules, right? So if you read this and you understand it, it's going to give you the ability to play pretty much every other game in the system, which is always nice. Series game. And then here we have the study folder. I'm not sure why it's called a folder, because to me it's like it's still a book. It's still staple printed, but that's what they call these things. Like they're playbooks basically. Some more nice artwork, and then basically what this is, it's 2-column format. It's a little different in terms of the formatting and font, but this is providing basically your scenario information. So dictating if there are special rules or special setup information. The actual setup information are on the player aid cards, so you're not going to see like this unit in this hex, but there are special rules, as you can see here, like quadrilateral specific special rules. Okay, so you want to make sure you read all of those because they're going to modify the base rules. Victory conditions, and more scenario information. This is black and white, so nothing too fancy here. And then you basically get to several pages of historical notes. So talking about the theater, all these different information on the French generals involved. Same thing for the Battle of Lodi, same thing. Various bits of information. So if you like the historical details, and I do, I love this kind of stuff in my war games. There's a very good bit of it. So, and I think this is standard for the series. Like the study book has plenty of information, and then here you see there's design notes that are specific to this game. So this quadrilateral project actually began with one key decision to include Mantova on its own map. I'm gonna read that. I haven't read it yet. And some other helpful notes and things, and then some additional chart table stuff on the back. So far so good, right? I mean, these are good things you might expect. And now here comes the stuff that I'm really interested in are the maps. The maps are quite good looking. Like I like the look of them. The font, the colors that are used are it just feels very like, I don't know, like these came out of a topographical bureau of the French Ministry, or the French Ministry of Topography. I don't know how they refer to it. Like these just look very nice. They're very nice maps. And I like the very fancy writing up here. That's all cool. But these the maps, they look cool. They're pretty clear. They look nice. They are paper maps. They feel a little light, so you would be careful with them. Want to watch they don't get too beat up. Slightly bigger map, I think, so I just want to be careful as I unfold this guy. This is a full-sized map, which you're not going to get a full appreciation of. I'll just move the camera a little bit so you can see. This is quite a big amount of space. Here you can see some OCS stuff behind there. Don't worry about that. So yeah, there's pretty nice maps, I'd say. I really like the look of them. I'm not going to look at every single map, but you can kind of see the overall aesthetic of these. And of course, each map is going to be representative of the terrain. So like this one, much more hilly and foresty than some of the other maps that we looked at. Same thing here. It's like there's a lot of urbanscape over here with the city of Verona and the territory surrounding it. So those are all nice. And then we have the counters. Now, what's interesting about this game, or this game series even really, is it's two counter sheets. It's two counter sheets. Now, this is probably supported by the fact that what we're dealing with here is 4 battles that are all kind of near one another, that many of the units used in one battle are going to be used in the next, so you don't need like tons and tons of separate counter sheets. But I mean, this is it. Like, this is the French army that's for the 4 battles, right? You've got very specific commands with the banners. You've got I want to say these are going to be the Austrians. Yep, Austrians. Using NATO symbols primarily for representing what the unit is. Some additional counters. A whole heap and bunch of administrative counters. I think some of these may be, well, I don't know the system well enough to be able to speak super intelligently to everything here, but there's a lot to look at here. So just something to keep in mind. Demoralization markers. Okay. So yeah, utility markers, and then the units and leaders, and just two counter sheets. So this won't take, I mean, if you're a fast puncher, well, it wouldn't take long to punch these. And then the counter quality, now, this is going to be a little hard to see if I can focus the camera right, which maybe I'm going to have a problem doing that. The counters feel, I mean, they, like, if I were just looking color-wise, these almost look like brown core, but they feel more like standard, what I would consider, quote-unquote, standard counter sheet quality. So they're not like the super thick deluxe brown core counters you might see in some games. They are very serviceable, standard, nice quality, and it feels like punching them out of the counter sheet is actually going to be very easy, like it won't take much. So I'd say slightly above average counter quality, like against the whole, breadth of the war game world. And then you're going to have a whole huge chunk of player aids. I think it's, 15 player aids. I mean, and I'm just going to pull a lot of these guys out of the box. One thing worth noting is that there is an update sheet that's in some of these games where, like, as of March 29, they made some slight adjustments. So it's just on this little sheet of paper. I want to make sure you pay attention to that. So just some setup changes, something to keep in mind. But you have, like, this tells you what cards will be removed from those universal decks. So just the circumstances of the battle may mean that you're not going to get as many replacements or whatever these cards represent. Scenario parameters. So there's a whole bunch, like it's oddly a lot of player aid sheets. So here's a turn record track, right? We didn't see any turn record tracks on the maps themselves. They're off separate here. And they're one-sided, so you could maybe set up multiple battles sometimes. I don't know. So you can see, turn tracks go by the hour turns, and days across multiple days. So you have several of these for the different battles, scenarios that are included. Several of these, right? And then you have the setup charts. So this basically says, for a given unit, right? Because the units are reused across battles. Where do they set up depending on what battle you're playing? That's all this really is. So it's a little, like, I don't know, is this the most efficient way to do it? I don't know, but that's how they choose to do it. Must work out okay because folks seem to be okay with it. So there's ones for the French, some for the coalition here. They're all very similar in nature. There's a casualty tracker for these. There's combat tables. Let's see, bombardment, combat results, charge combat, shock combat tables. On the back, notes to the combat tables. Full strength holding box. Weather tables. Different games in the series have different weather situations given the historical weather of the time. Some information on the fog of war cards that may be used, and some additional guidance around using those cards, the universal cards. More combats. This is really more like a player aid pamphlet where it opens up and it gives you your terrain chart and various other charts and reference tables in here. An abbreviated sequence of play as well, and order slips. So telling your units where they're going, what they're doing. And a victory worksheet. I think this is if you're doing a campaign and you're just seeing like how you came out ahead or behind your opponent across multiple battles. And that's it for this box. So I mean, if you look at this, you get the very general sense that this is you still get plenty of stuff. It's just not many counters. They're relatively efficient on counters. The maps are nice. The player aids are plentiful. They're not all card stock, mind you, but that's okay. And then you have the playbook or study folder and the rules. So altogether, I mean, it's like this was the price was right on this one. Some interesting battles. We'll get the other one in the series soon enough. So early career Napoleon, that's always fun to see. We also have Napoleon's Wheel, which I see it's like a height of Napoleon. So for me, Bonaparte and the Quadrilateral, that being um, early career Napoleon, relatively speaking. This being sort of like height of Napoleon, when he shocked Europe with the Battle of Austerlitz and that whole thing. Unfortunately for me, I got a little bit of this like flared box edge, which is a little annoying. It's not a big deal, but I hate when I see that. So here's similar. I'm going to go a little more quickly through this one. So there's a study folder. You guys, I don't think there's going to be too much to show here, right? This is very similar format, same sort of thing. The component quality is going to be the same, only you're talking about this set of battles and the Danube campaign study folder. Here are the cards that were mentioned. So they have these separated out. So this obviously being the coalition deck, and then this is the French deck with the Napoleon deck. You want to look at that? You need to see there's like examples of what these things do. So you can pick, both of these happen to use the same type of card as the front one of the deck here, wrapped in shrink, but pick one friendly force. This force must redeploy in road march column, displace the nearest road, So I'm not sure how all these are going to work together. The card deck is not huge, right? So it's a little deck. You're probably not going to have that much randomness. You're going to have a pretty good idea what cards are going to be coming up if you've gone through many of these. The series rules, same series version. What's nice is because I have multiple games in the series, I can give my opponent a booklet and he can read that while we're playing. That'd be convenient. This one, again, is a 2 counter sheet game. So we have the French, and we have both the Austrians and the Russians, right? Because there's really the 2 armies working at that point. So oh man, I'm about to lose counters out of the counter sheet. They're coming loose, guys. Easy peasy to punch. So some of these utility counters, but mostly army units. Let me just see. We'll zoom in for a second. There's infantry, there are artillery, distinct artillery units. There's cavalry, also baggage trains or supply wagons, all sorts of stuff here. We have the maps. Now, I don't know, again, it's like they're just a show. Like, here's the Ulm map. You can see there's a bunch of, like, marsh terrain, right? So across all these different battles, imagine you're playing the Peninsular War one. Like, the terrain will be very different. Each of these games will have varying map terrain and impacts. This is a smaller one, so the Battle of Dür is going to be a relatively smaller one, while fighting along the banks near Krem, and heavily forested. It looks like a lot of forest terrain, major river, minor rivers, and then much smaller rivers even. They all look very attractive. Like the maps, I just really like the look of the maps. I don't know. I'm going to be stuck on that, guys. I'll be stuck on that. So there's more maps. I'm not going to look through each and every one of them. And then here's your update sheet of paper for February 2022, and a whole huge set of player aid sheets. And again, like there's a lot here, guys. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but it does so you guys can see. What's interesting is because the system or the series is following such a very specific format, it's probably pretty easy just to there's commonality across these, right? You're going to get your set of player aid sheets. They're going to be common. They're just going to be specific to each battle or game. You're going to get your series rules. You're going to get your playbook, study book, study folder. It's all going to look good. Finally, we have Napoleon against Russia. Now this one's going to be, quite similar. It does include its own set of cards. You can see the backs are a little bit different. I'm not sure of the significance of that. So this is clearly a just Russia deck, and this is Napoleon's Empire deck. But there's that road column card again. So the cards themselves are going to be pretty similar. This game just happens to have included the own deck of cards as opposed to other games which assume you've already purchased one of these. Here's a Smolensk, the Battle of Smolensk map. Again, they vary in size, so some are bigger than others. Looks like this one might be just the first half of a map. Or there's a cutoff here with Smolensk itself, but you can let's do a quick pan. So all this kind of stuff, again, similar quality. Series rules, 7.35, same thing. Study folder, this one looks like it's fully in black and white the whole way through. But again, all the same kind of stuff. Designer's notes for each one. And then, you guessed it, it's a 2-counter sheet game. Only this being a whole lot more Russians than Napoleon's Wheel. And then, of course, the French and their allies that are part of the same set. So I think these might be Poles down here, Polish units. Yeah, so there you go. I mean, there's, I think what's interesting, it's like I'm doing these 3 games, but really, I mean, if you can't tell, if I were to buy any more games in the series, unless something drastically changes in the component quality, the unboxing videos would all be very much the same. Very similar looking type of content. Zoom out a little bit here. You guys appreciate the artwork. So yeah, this is a series I've wanted to get into. Still want to see about other games in the series as they can become available, but this, I think, gives me a really this is plenty of battles, right? This is many battles to experience, to get used to the system. Definitely someone I want to look at. I even have some folks somewhat local that may be willing to play these, who also want to get into the series. So I'm lucky in that way. I may be able to get connected with somebody to play. So yeah, jumping into this. Hope this was useful to you guys. If you've not been familiar with this series, I mean, this publisher again is hyper focused on this specific thing of the Library of Napoleonic battles. So this is their bread and butter. Seems like they've gotten now finally into a really good groove of what are they publishing? What does it all look like? There's consistency in the box aesthetics, the component quality is all very nice looking, and so good luck to them continuing to publish stuff. I'm going to be paying attention to this, especially on my battle focused kick. That while there is no series titled The Great Battles of Napoleon at this point from any publisher, this is at least one iteration of such a series. There are other publishers that are doing battles of Napoleon. Those exist. They're out there, but this one seemed to be in the right lane for me to check out and to jump right into a lot of good content for it. The next best thing that I've played up to this point at the battle level is Command and Colors Napoleonics, which I do think is the best version of Commands and Colors. But it's just a very different system, and it's not as detailed or realistic as a system like this would attempt to be, or same thing with like Commands and Color Ancients versus Great Battles of History and so on. I mean, there's a different level of fidelity, and this one seems quite right. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope this was useful. We'll see you in future videos, and take care. Keep gaming.